here with the three ladies that I'm with. I think we should have done that. Just realized that. But anyways, okay, so we're going to start with some introductions. My name here is Ron Beleno. I'm an active advocate in the dementia, caregiving, aging, and research communities. I myself was a caregiver to my father who lived with Alzheimer's for over 10 years. I'm also the chair, a co-chair of the Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee of AgeWell, which is also the OACAC. And I'll introduce who the members are there in a few minutes here. I'm going to pass it on to the three wonderful ladies that's joining me today. We'll start with Olive, who will introduce herself, then to Lisa, and then to Sherry. So Olive.
Hi, my name is Olive Bryanton. I'm from Prince Edward Island, and I am the Atlantic Regional Representative on the Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee. As a believer in lifelong learning and a passionate advocate for older adults, I was awarded a Doctorate of Laws honoris causa from the University of Prince Edward Island in the year 2000. I received the Queen Elizabeth Jubilee in the year 2012 for my work with seniors nationally and federally. And I graduated from UPEI, or the University of Prince Edward Island, in 2018 with my PhD. And yesterday I was inducted as a member of the Order of Prince Edward Island. So very importantly, I am also the proud parent of 3 girls and 2 boys, and my life is full.
Thank you, Olive, and congratulations on everything that you've done. So there's a whole list there. Lisa Poole. Lisa. Oh, Lisa. Yeah, there you go.
That's a hard act to follow. I'm a family care partner. My father has dementia, and I'm one of the West-Central reps for this AgeWell Advisory Committee. I founded Dementia Connections magazine, and I'm the co-chair of Dementia Advocacy Canada.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lisa. And Lisa, you're in Alberta, correct? Just to confirm.
Oh, yes, that's correct. I should have mentioned that.
And all of it, your PEI. Right, okay. And we have on the West Coast, all the way on the West, so from East to West, Sherry Baker. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you all today. This is an important day for all of us, and especially those of us who are considered older adults. I am the vice chair of the older adults, one of the vice chairs of one of the older adults and caregivers advisory committee for AgeWell, and I represent the West. I'm in British Columbia, and I am still, I shouldn't actually say that I was still working, because it shouldn't be that remarkable that people over 80 can still hold important and full-time jobs to do work that is improving community. My job is as the executive director of the BC Association of Community Response Networks. We do support the coordinated community response to adult abuse, neglect, and self-neglect throughout the province. We have 81 community networks, and we're supporting 233 communities, and it's growing all the time. So I have about 25 people working on contract for us all over the province, and we're making some headway. Our purpose is to develop an awareness and prevent abuse, neglect, and self-neglect. So, and I'm in my 80s, and I intend to keep doing this work for a while because it's exciting and important, and it's helping to make communities safer for our vulnerable adults. And I also have been awarded the medal, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, and some other awards that have been very generously given to me over the years for the work I've been doing in community, but it's always the work that's coming ahead that's interesting me. So thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And as well, congrats on your the recognition you had over the years. Lisa, I'm not sure we got to keep up yes, sorry, with these two ladies. So especially to both you, Sherry and Oliver, thank you, and celebrating today, you know, both of you and many of the others out there. Just prior to this presentation, we were talking about the age of what's an older adult, and I think online for the United Nations, it's 65. So Lisa and I, we don't think we're there yet. So that's just a technical number there. Okay, so let's see here. So the Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee, or the OACAC, who are we? Increasingly Age Well is including the voices of older adults and caregivers. Oh, sorry. I think, yeah. Of older adults and caregivers. Some use the term care partners at every level of their work. At the network level, the Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee has been in place for over 2 years. And part of our role is to be a forum for older adults and caregivers involved with AgeWell to provide guidance on mandate, programming, and strategic directions. And we're appointed to represent older adults and caregivers engaged within AgeWell. And just one little clarity here. Sometimes it's not just a separation of older adults and caregivers. And many older adults out there are also caregivers themselves. So something to be aware of. Okay? The members, that's a good looking group there from Canada there. And I saw in the chat a few of you there, Chaitali and Marjorie. Here are all of our committee members, many of which are in the webinar today. We have representation from across Canada and a mix of older adults and caregivers informing AgeWell's work at a strategic level. Many of these folks are also engaged in research projects, events, and research papers. I also want to acknowledge that some of them are also mentors to innovators and especially the HQPs, the highly qualified personnel, the trainees within AgeWell. And I think that's a big part that we have a lot of interaction with that crowd. Now, if this is your first AgeWell webinar, you may be wondering, what is AgeWell? Okay. So AgeWell is Canada's technology and aging network. Our vision is to be Canada's leadership in technology and aging benefits. Sorry, our vision is Canada's leadership in technology and aging benefits around the world. I think that's something we have to correct there. Our mission is to develop a community of researchers, older adults, caregivers, partners, and future leaders that accelerates the delivery of technology-based solutions that make a meaningful difference in the lives of Canadians. Now, a term that you're going to hear us use a fair bit is the term AgeTech. So just keep that in mind. That's kind of a term that we'd like to share a little bit more. AgeTech. Okay. Here we have a brief overview of AgeWell's successes from the last 5 to 6 years. They have over 200, or we have over 250 researchers across 43 universities and research centers in 8 provinces. AgeWell supports 40 startups and has a community of 4,700 engaged older adults and caregivers. The network has produced 118 solutions with a mix of technologies, policies, practices, and services. Finally, with the support of a diverse number of partners, AgeWell has launched 4 national innovation hubs coast to coast. As a network focused on improving the lives of older adults and caregivers, we wanted to talk about today checking in with some of the older adults and caregiver experiences that we've gone through, especially during COVID, discussing AgeTech used at home during the pandemic, and exploring the challenges and opportunities for AgeTech. What is AgeTech? So for us, AgeTech is technology-based solutions that improve the lives of older adults and their caregivers. Just going to add to this, for me, whenever I talk about technology, it's not just high-tech, just something to be aware of. Technology could be high-tech, low-tech, as well as the involvement of policy, all that stuff. That's not what we always think of right away as the term technology. But that could be from software applications to hardware sensors, robots, and smart homes. So here, I'm going to ask Olive, Lisa, and Sherry to kind of give some comments on some of these questions that I have for them about the lived experience dealing with COVID-19 during the past 6-7 months here. So I'm going to ask a few questions. For example, I'll ask a question of like, how are friends and family in long-term care or nursing homes doing? How are you staying active? What are the challenges you are seeing? What are the silver linings, okay? Innovations and approaches that are helping. So those are just a few questions that I have. And each of, we have Lisa, Sherry, and Olive, they're gonna answer, not all of them, but just some that is specific to their situation. So those are some of my questions, but Olive, if you'd like to give, an overview from your perspective as an older adult, specifically in rural communities.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, I as an older adult living in a rural community, I have been one of the lucky ones when it came to the pandemic. I live with my daughter, and my other 4 children live within 20 kilometers. So we supported each other from day one. And we did it in certain ways, like my children all ended up continuing their work throughout the pandemic and continued to do that. But one was retired. But 2 of them were essential workers, so they actually had to work outside the home, and the other 2 were within the home. But we constantly supported one another. Like because we weren't able to get out to meals and things like that or go to one another's homes, we ended up making maybe a large meal and delivering it around to each other's homes. Now, we didn't go in the home, we dropped it off on the back deck. And so in my case, usually I made some biscuits or some bread or some casseroles or something, and I would sit them out on the back deck. And when they came to deliver their food, they would also pick up something that was new and different for them. I was in constant communication using telephone and the internet. And our family has a Facebook family site, and we use it constantly. And we use it either to send a message to everyone, or if it's going to specific ones, we do it that way. So that's a great way to stay in contact. And we also, I also did a lot of texting because it appears that my younger family members hate using the telephone. So you have to text them to get an answer back from them. And we started using Zoom as a family when my grandson, who lives out in Vancouver, set up a Zoom meeting for us all, and that was a fun thing to do. The first time I went out shopping, which was probably a month and a half, because prior to that, my son has a retail store which has a grocery department in it. So he and his wife became our personal shoppers, which was lovely. The first time I went out shopping after, I thought it was amazing because I went into the store and somehow failed to see all the arrows and would find myself going up or down the aisle in the wrong way. But getting out for the first time was almost giddy. The first time I took my own car for a drive, it was just amazing. Professionally, I continue with my activities, primarily using Zoom, and my meetings were regional, national, and international. And I was preparing for different meetings. So that really kept me busy and kept me active, and I unfortunately, not all my friends were as fortunate, and they ended up with having to be alone. They didn't have family and friends. Their friends were in the same situations they were. They either did not have children of their own, or their children were living in other provinces. So they found it really, really difficult. Because it's a rural community that we live in, we certainly lack essential services such as transportation and adequate internet service. That is extremely important, and I think we've always grumbled about the terrible internet service we have in rural communities, but because of the change in our lifestyle, we had to use the internet so much. It was very difficult at times. And I really feel that without family support and without having activities that I had to do, I would not have been as fortunate as I was. So I'm just thankful that I had family and friends, and I was quite conversant with using technology.
So thank you, Olive. The beauty of internet is, or the challenges, let's say, I'm going to use the term, is that you shared pretty much what's going on through your side. For a short little second, there were some audio challenges as you're talking about some of that there, but we're all good there. We're all good right now.
Okay.
So, but we got the main points and the highlights there. Thank you. I'm going to go to Lisa. Lisa, from your part as a caregiver, I know that there's some themes that you might want to touch upon in your world, but I'll let you go and discuss.
Well, first of all, I can say I think Olive planned that, because she started talking about the challenges of the internet, the quality of the internet, right when she started breaking up. So
Exactly.
well, Olive, you timed that perfectly. So for family caregivers, the COVID has been very challenging. Whether you have someone living in a care home or whether you're living in the community, there were, talking about technology challenges. If you were living in the community, all the supports were canceled. Day programs, respite, and all activities were canceled, and that made it very challenging for people who are at home and who need support. Home care was also, for the most part, canceled, largely canceled. And for people who are living in care homes, as most people probably know, that the family members were restricted access, which was extremely distressing, because approximately, the number I've heard is approximately 30% of care is actually provided by family caregivers. We know that the residential care homes are understaffed, and so family members don't just go there on social visits. They're also helping groom, helping people eat, they're helping take people outside. And for some people, I know FaceTime calls using technology, they worked really well and people were able to remain connected. But in our situation, my father has advanced dementia and we mostly communicate via touch with him. And so we tried a FaceTime call set up with a staff member, but it just wasn't a useful way to connect with him. And plus it's challenging for the staff members because they were already working so hard on all the other issues that they were trying to address. So I think that the technology has been, absolutely essential, and we've really all come to rely on it during COVID. But I still think that there's lots of areas where there's lots of room for innovation remaining to figure out how we can use technology for situations where something like FaceTime isn't a suitable option.
Thanks, Lisa. And I know you have a personal interest and passion around long-term care, so that's some of the work that you're doing. There's many that's on this call that have a connection to dementia, just like myself and yourself. And yeah, I'll talk on my part in a second about some of those challenges. Although funny, your phone rang, I believe there, and sometimes technology gets in the way, actually.
Oh, and Ron, sorry to jump in. I have one more thing I wanted to add. One of the things that was taking place in Calgary, anyhow, is that in conjunction with Dementia Network Calgary, they offered a program with the Red Cross to educate family members on appropriate use of PPE and infection control. So to help the care homes feel comfortable having family members back in, like once the restrictions were opened, and we're hoping that if there's a second wave that hits here, that family members will not be shut out again.
Okay. Thanks there, Lisa. There was a question here, which I'll come back to later, regarding PCR testing for COVID-19. I'm not sure if that was directed to you, Lisa, or Olive, but I'll come back to that for Moyne there. Sherry, we'll pass it on to you, some of your personal experiences over the past while.
Sure, thanks, Ron. Well, there's all sorts of different levels, and I may just go around for some of them. For me, I'm an extrovert, which is no surprise to you guys who know me. And I find that not being able to have the personal contact, one-on-one contact, is really difficult because I get a lot of energy from being around people. So it took me a while, it took me a few weeks to kind of adjust to that. And I felt really tired for a while, but I'm fine. You know, I've been fine now, but it took me quite a while. I live in a townhouse and I have a patio. So I'm involved in a lot of community organizations in my community. I live in Langley, which is just outside of Vancouver. And it's a really large community. I think we have about 150,000 people in our municipality. And I'm involved in Rotary and a lot of other organizations as well. So I became rather known as Sherry with her patio visits, because I used to have, and I still do have, people coming and visiting me on my patio. I haven't let very many people actually in my house. I live by myself, and I have 3 children, adult children, and 6 adult grandchildren, but they're all over Canada. My oldest daughter lives in Quebec City, and so I've had to depend on my community contacts, my neighbors, and so on, for that kind of support. So it's been fine. I think for me, it just took a while to adjust to not being able to be one-on-one with people. That was hard. And I go grocery shopping during seniors hours, you know, at 7 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, things like that. Had to go to my appointments and so on, and I, you know, wear the mask, and, you know, I'm just careful, and so far so good. But professionally, it's been really interesting with the association, BC Association of Community Response Networks, which I call BCCRN, because we had started using Zoom before the pandemic, because we've always had to be able to communicate remotely because I have people all over the province. So we've been prior to Zoom, been using conference call lines, which we still have, and some of our networks still use it. So we were quite, you know, getting quite good at the Zoom. But now, of course, with all the meetings and communication and so on, each of our 15 regional mentors have their own Zoom account, and they're using them to communicate back and forth. And they're working with a lot of older adults in their communities. So sometimes they have to use the conference line because some of them can't use the Zoom. So it's been a challenge, I think, but we've adjusted really well to it. And I think, you know, with some of our organizations use Teams and other platforms as well. There's a silver lining in all this from my point of view as far as time is concerned, because I'm on a lot of committees and boards and things, and I used to do a lot of traveling, and now I don't have all that travel time. So now those meetings are taking place on Zoom, most of them, and so it's made it a lot easier for me to be able to attend and to look after, you know, my responsibilities by not having to travel a lot. And I'm on another committee for TransLink public transit in Metro Vancouver, and of course I'm not using public transit anymore, not till this is over. So, you know, it's been an interesting development and looking at how we will continue after the pandemic. I think we will continue to use a lot of these platforms in the future as well, because it's much more efficient and time, and it's from an administrative point of view, it's less expensive as well. There's one little anecdote that was interesting. Well, there's a couple. I just heard from one of my network people yesterday about a pre-programmed tablet that's being distributed out of Vancouver, and it may be other places as well, but it's specifically for seniors. And with, apparently, I haven't seen it because I just heard about it yesterday, that they've developed ways to just program these tablets. So with one touch, a person can get their medication schedule, their appointment schedules, all the other things that they would want to do. They can get one touch onto Zoom or their whatever platform they're using. And it takes away the necessity for a big learning curve for our seniors to use the technology, which is interesting, and I'm going to look more into that. The other thing is I graduated from UBC 60 years ago, and it was a small faculty. There were only 40 of us in the faculty, so decided that I would offer Zoom for a reunion this fall, and never really thinking that everybody wasn't as familiar with it as I am. Silly. Found out that, of course, a lot of the people in our class had passed away or were in care, but there were 20 that responded and were interested out of the 40, and well, there's probably only about 25 or 26 left, and out of those, there were 4 that have to have support from their family members or somebody else, because they can't do the technology, and several others don't have cameras on their computers. They're going to be doing it by phone. It's been a very interesting development to offer the support we need, so we can all, they're all excited about getting together after 60 years, but it's been an interesting kind of wake-up call as I look at the stats that say 65% of seniors are feeling comfortable with technology. What we're talking about now with the people over 80 who are, that's a lot, 35% of the seniors, the 35% that are not comfortable with technology. I think a lot of those are in the over 80 time, group, and we'll talk about how these older adults are interested in learning about it, and a lot of them are, but a lot of them are not. They just don't want to have any part of it. So I think we need to figure out other ways of connecting with them. So that's my story at the moment.
Thank you, Sherry. You kind of led into something that I wanted to talk about on my end, on my experience as a caregiver to a mom, older adult who lives by herself, as well as I'm caring for a few other friends, checking in on some aunts and uncles and some other caregivers that are caring for an older adult. And more the comment I wanted to share is something that I'd like to talk about is the digital divide, okay, the division of the haves and the have-nots. One thing that Alex Mihailidis from AgeWell, a scientific director, talks about is the digital determinants of health. And for those of you familiar with the social determinants of health, just imagine the digital challenges, okay? So Sherry, you talked about the challenges of, let's say my mom simply, her dance class, her Filipino dance group, they just finally got on Zoom to figure out how to have their dance classes together. And it's fun and enjoyable to watch them all talk over each other, during the classes. Everyone's peeking into the camera, like, can you see me? Can you see me? So that's kind of fun and enjoyable to watch, but those are the ones that have access to that. That's just that crowd. I've realized that there's a lot of learning required from all levels, from the caregivers, from those that they're caring for. And it's, when it comes to technology and having this, it's just something that I'm saying that from my view, COVID just kind of put a spotlight on those that have and those that don't have it, okay, that don't have access to it, that don't have technical support, just the education. So the silver lining from my end is this network, okay, AgeWell, the work that we're all doing is to kind of work on that digital divide. The determinants of health related to technology and innovation is that we got to improve upon that. So that's my challenge to all of us, to keep working on that and move a little faster with more impact. So that's just kind of a little bit from my side as a caregiver. I'm going to pass it back to Olive now. And Olive will be talking about some of the work that AgeWell has done recently. Olive?
Thank you, Ron. As mentioned by Sherry, a new AgeWell poll was conducted by Environics Research and just released this past Tuesday. It notes that almost 3/4 of Canadians aged 65 and over feel confident using the current technology. Older Canadians have upped their use of technology since the inceptions of COVID-19 pandemic, and they have significantly increased their use of social media with things like food delivery apps and fitness trackers. And almost 2/3 of Canadians aged 65 and older own a smartphone, and 83% of them use it daily. Some older adults have taken to video calling as a way to connect with others. About 1/4, or 23% of Canadians aged 65 and over now use video calling on their smartphones, twice as many as in 2019. So 6 in 10 report increasing use due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Olive, I think I'm behind on the slides here. You shared this one, right? The social media, yes?
Yep.
Okay.
And social media use is also on the rise, with 1/3 of older adults aged 65 and older using various apps to communicate with family and friends. And 4 in 10 report using social media more during the COVID pandemic. And I know that has certainly worked for me, although I was using it a lot beforehand. And 66% of Canadians over 50 believe that technology advancements can help to lessen the impact of COVID-19 on their daily lives. And finally, just over half of Canadians aged 50 or older had a telehealth appointment in the last 3 months. And the majority of them were satisfied with this experience. So let's hear from our panel about their use of technology. We know what the stats are for older adults. So Lisa, have you been using technology from the caregiver perspective?
Well, as much as we can, and I spoke earlier about the Red Cross training course on infection control and PPE. And you know, my mom has 5 grandchildren, and so she also is very accustomed to texting, because if she wants to keep in touch with them, that she had to learn that platform. So that's what we do as a family. We have all kinds of group chats for texting, and that's one way that we stay in touch. And so that's not necessarily for the caregiving aspect of my father, who's living in the care home. But yes, my mom is now in her 80s, and she just had knee replacement surgery. In fact, right before the pandemic, I think she's one of the last people to have surgery. And so that had its own challenges, because once again, all the supports and services were canceled. And so we had to rally as a family to figure that one out. And texting was huge for us.
Thanks, Lisa. What I'm going to do for the next 5 to 10 minutes here, just kind of have a conversation, just an open conversation with all three of you regarding, I know we just shared kind of our personal experiences, but to kind of, for the audience to kind of hear just some thoughts from each of you. And then we're going to kind of go into the Q&A with, there's a fair bit here that I'm looking at that we can go over here. So I'm going to pick Sherry first, I guess. You know, Jess, I know you talked about using Zoom with your group. Okay, so with COVID, you know, 19, the new technologies or apps that you're using. I know you touched upon them. Zoom's a big one. Is there anything else, or do you want to elaborate more on what you're using?
Zoom and the telephone, they're sort of important in the work that we do, because the further away you get from the metropolitan areas into the rural and remote areas, sometimes you have to resort to the telephone. But I'm thinking about elder abuse and the fact that there's been a dramatic increase in the incidences of elder abuse since the pandemic started. And in looking at that, it's because of the increased isolation of people, which makes them more vulnerable, and their families may have lost their jobs, so there's an issue around financial income, and one of the biggest issues around elder abuse is financial abuse. So I think, well, we know that there's a lot of that going on throughout the province or throughout probably the country, and so there probably are fragile family relationships anyway, and now they're thrust together 24/7, and that can be very, very dangerous, because it's also found with the domestic violence that has increased hugely too. So as far as the technology is concerned, it still is mainly the platforms. What we're doing around the province, we're finding all kinds of different ways of breaking the isolation of people, providing information along with food or meals and so on that are being delivered. Each community figures out their own way of doing that. Service clubs are doing a lot of extra work, taking on extra Meals on Wheels routes, sewing masks, doing all kinds of things that will be help to keep people safe, because that's what we want to do. But as far as the technology itself is concerned, other than those platforms, that's the main use at the moment. But other than this interesting pre-programmed tablet that I hadn't heard about, that I think that could be, and also some of the communities are receiving tablets from various grants, and we support, some of our communities are supporting that as well. Then they're being used for communicating back and forth, doing programs, exercises, and that kind of thing. But as far as the more sophisticated technological developments that AgeTech does so well, I know that they're looking at ways to find better ways of keeping people independent, safe, and at home. And I think that's the important thing that we need to be looking at.
Yeah, Sherry, the aging in place term has come up a lot now, and that's, for example, the communication piece, the tablet. I know within AgeWell, there's FamilyNet. Okay, so I know they're working on that ability to communicate. The one I'm guessing you might be talking about, one I use with my family in Seattle is GrandPad. So it's kind of easier. So that's just, but there's numerous out there, AgeTech. So thanks, Sherry. Next one's for Lisa. I'm just wondering if you have a favorite technology that you're using. And I'm going to take away Zoom. I think everyone already knows Zoom, but I'm giving you trying to buy you some time if you have any technology that you're using, or an app, or a low-tech solution.
Well, a technology that we've been relatively recently introduced to is that doorbell video camera. So my mom and dad were married for over 50 years. My mom has never lived by herself before, and she went straight from living with her family to living with my father. And so when my father moved into care, that was just a massive adjustment for her. And so, you know, last year we had to put the dog down, and that was a companion for her for some time. And so now living on her own, this doorbell gives her a sense of confidence, because not only can she see who's at her door no matter where she is, and so if someone's delivering something, she can say, thank you, leave it at the door, or she can see if it's someone who she wants to answer or not. And so I think that has been a fantastic piece of technology that has allowed her to feel more comfortable living on her own.
So that whole concept of visual monitoring, that's something that I'll agree that just the ability to see, using the senses, okay, so the senses to hear brings a lot of security, reduces the fear levels. Okay, that's one of the things I talk about. So no, that's great that mom is using that there.
And I just want to say one more thing that's really amazes me is that she can get the doorbell ringing in her hearing aids.
Wow, did not know that.
There's all these, yes, tech connections and AgeTech, yes.
So some of you that I know that I've had conversations with hearing aids, that you're excited that you could control it through your phone. You can apparently control it. You're saying, Lisa, whip the doorbell, so someone rings it and you could be in somewhere else in the house and you'll hear it?
Yeah, and you don't even have to be home. She could be like at the grocery store, and she can actually even talk to people through her hearing aids.
Interesting.
On her front door.
Okay, that's a new one I'm not aware of, so thanks. That'd be fun, sort of, depending on the situation. So all of my question next to you is if you can comment just the challenges. Okay, we heard Sherry, some of her challenges, but I'm wondering, Olive, if there's any challenges during COVID that you've realized regarding technology that's been in your life or anyone you know?
Well, with respect to finding some of the solutions and the working on the challenges, I believe AgeWell's concept of wicked problems, described as issues that are multifaceted, pervasive and persistent with no easy solution, summarizes the difficulties that are related to researching, developing, and making available technologies that support the aged and those who are aging. We've talked a lot about the learnings from COVID-19 and that we must prepare for our new normal, whatever that is. But what are we learning? Has COVID-19 revealed that there are gaps in the care and service programs and services for older adults, and there are gaps in what we know about the realities of aging. So the new normal that are, to me, that are wicked problems and challenges, but also can provide opportunities, are that as an older adult living the realities of aging, I believe an issue that we need to address is how we as researchers, technology, or other service providers and developers behave or perceive older adults. And for example, in research, we identify older adults as those people who are 50 plus, or 50 and older, or the 65 plus. And we're not acknowledging that within a possible span of 35 or 50 years, there are different levels of capabilities, diversities, wants, needs, and desires. So as researchers and product developers and service providers, we need to learn from life experiences and recognize abilities, capabilities, and strengths that older adults have, regardless of their situation, and build on what they bring to adequately support them or their caregivers. So I think we have to stop seeing older adults as vulnerable, those who are helpless, susceptible, defenseless, and weak individuals. We have to start regarding them as they're looking at their, regardless of their health status or situation, realizing that they all bring strengths and capabilities. And we must start focusing on what capabilities each person has and then help them build from there. I think as older adults throughout our lives, we have learned to cope. We have developed some resilience. And I think we have to look at older adults as having capabilities and strengths and find out what is needed. I mean, what a 90-year-old needs and what a 50-year-old needs is very different. What a 70-year-old needs is very different. So I think if we're going to adequately solve problems and support what older adults need, I really think we have to start breaking them down, the ages down a bit narrower. For example, we could say the 50 to 65 are the pre-adults. 66 to 75 are the apprentice adults, and 75 to 90, or 75 to 90, yeah, are the experienced adults. And beyond that, they're really experienced. So we need to know from the older adults themselves how we can work with them to solve the issues and problems that we have.
Thank you, Olive. One of the things I know we talk a lot about in this space is stigma, right? Just taking on the stigma. And it's very easy to see you, Sherry, others on the Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee taking that on. So appreciate that. Sherry, were you going to comment?
I would just want to add to something what Olive was saying, because I get disturbed when I because of a certain age, you know, being an older adult or whatever it might be. I think it's I know, and we certainly with the work I do, that there are people in their 60s that are really vulnerable. They're really fragile and vulnerable people. They're people that we would attribute perhaps to, by age, to somebody in their 80s. But they need to be cared for and provided with the opportunities to live the best life they can in their 60s or 70s. So it's not just age. It's a whole pile of other things. It's your health, it's your outlook, it's your education, it's your drive, it's everything else that comes together. I mean, I've got lots of, my body is old. I know I've got knee replacements and hip and all those kinds of things. But, you know, I mean, I've been able to adjust to, and as so has Olive, to do the things that we know are making a difference, and that's what we have chosen to do. But I know I have lots of contemporaries who have a challenge just getting up and getting through the day. I mean, and you know, there's genetics, there's heredity, there's all kinds of other factors in there that I think we need to keep in mind and not try and put people into slots. At the same time, as I say that, is that the ageism is huge, because we need to make sure that we're not just plugging people of a certain age into a certain category, because that's just not the way it is.
Or making assumptions based on someone's age.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that easy. And there's one other thing I wanted to say about AgeWell is that when they are when the researchers and the people who are coming up with these great ideas that they come up with, one of the things that they do is they pass them by somebody within our advisory group, an older adult or caregivers, you know, person there to review them and to look at them from a layperson's point of view and say, is this really going to work? And I've enjoyed doing that with some of these proposals, because sometimes I say, you know, good luck with it, but I don't think that's going to work. And so it's a very important function that I think our committee plays within the Age Well work of doing, developing these technologies. So anyway, that was just a little.
Thanks, Sharon, on that. Just a comment from Eva, or maybe Eva. Great to highlight the diversity of older adults in many aspects. So the diversity plays a big part.
Oh, that was Eva. I haven't seen her for a long time. She was in Delta, I think. She's still there.
A good friend of yours there, I'm assuming there. So
yeah.
I'm just going to try and answer some of the questions and comments that came through the last while here. There was one here. Sorry, I lost my. It was from Alicia over in Ottawa. And maybe Lisa, you and I can try and answer this. I'll chime in. She works in a seniors living, low-income buildings in Ottawa, and how could we help them to use tech so they can participate in online activities? So I'll give my short little comment, Alicia. For me, it's about trial and error. It's one where I believe technology you need to experience. You need to touch it, hear it, feel it. And I always approach it to say, hey, let's give it a try. Okay, it's just, let's introduce it, but we can take it away. So it's about choice. So that's just my view, is to allow people to have choice in receiving technology, but I kind of sneak it in as, let's just give it a trial for 1 week, right? And then we'll pull it out after 1 week. And if you pull it out and they want it, they'll probably come back in. So that's my thoughts. Lisa, any?
Well, I think one of the other barriers is sometimes people don't even know what technology can do for them. So maybe if they want to put a library book on hold, or there's something else that they are interested in doing. So finding out what they're trying to do and then seeing if there's a way to use technology to help with whatever that is. I think that would be a great place to start. But I agree with Ron, like showing people technology, because sometimes it's overwhelming if you don't have it to know where to start. And so that idea of having the pre-populated tablets or really simple technology, I think there's like cell phones that have, you know, reduced options and buttons. I think that there's lots of great options to try.
Thanks, Lisa. Another question from Kat, this is for you, Olive. As someone living in a rural community, how does your location play a part in your access to AgeTech? What barriers existed before COVID, and which ones were exaggerated as a result of COVID? I know you answered some of these earlier, but if you can.
Well, I think the barriers are how far you are away from the tower, because you're getting your signals online, and what's between you and the tower. And I live 9 kilometers from the city, and yet our internet service is horrible. It's almost as bad as the dial-up used to be. So it depends on where you live. It depends on, some of the barriers are the fact that people don't understand that people living in rural areas, or the providers don't understand that people living in the rural areas need internet as much as the people who live in the cities. And so they're really not looking at the true needs of what's needed. So I think another barrier is maybe we as people living in rural communities are not complaining enough, and we're not going back, you know, we're not going at the people who are in charge and who are making the policy decisions. So I think we really need to have people realize that internet is an essential service now. It's not just an add-on. So it is an essential service. We have to do something about it.
Just wanted to add, and Teresa made a good point here. She chimed in, and I know families dealing with this, even in long-term care. Some families want the Wi-Fi in the rooms of their loved ones. Lisa, you probably know that. And there's a lot of issues around that. One, even are you allowed to put technology in there? You know, the policy around having a webcam or a camera in there. So, so that's a good point. Thank you there, Teresa. I'll get a short answer from you,
Ron,
Sherry.
I think too, there's a lack of realization that we can be given the tools, but unless we're given proper training and education and follow-up, we're not going to get people using technology, because I know even myself, and I've used technology almost forever, I run into glitches and I need someone that I can call and say, look, help. And we don't seem to have that available. And people do love, I think people love to learn no matter what age they are.
Agreed. Yeah. Sherry, if you can give like a maybe 20-second answer to a question before we finish up here. AgeTech and elder abuse. Do you see a place for that? That was a question asked by someone.
Oh, I think so. I think I can't do a fast answer, but a lot of it is education, is finding ways to tell people what their rights are, whether they're being abused or not, and what resources are available to them. And we are actually providing that on paper, actually, into people's homes with the groceries and food and other deliveries that are being made by other community agencies, which are also part of our network. So, but for the technology piece, I can't think of anything specifically, other than I think that if the person who is being abused is allowed to have access to technology, which is sometimes one of the areas that abuse takes place, where they're not allowed to phone or to have a computer or anything. But if they are allowed to, then they need to, there are lots of ways that they can get that information, because the information is really important in preventing abuse.
Yeah.
But it's way more complicated than that, but that's the best I can do. Yeah.
For education and information, yeah, technology plays that huge role. So just going to finish up here. All of you can read here. I'm not going to read that, just how you can get involved. There is a link, and there's some ways you could be involved through research projects and sharing your experiences. You could subscribe to the AgeWell newsletter, and there is also a way you could donate to AgeWell and help create the future. The link is right there for more information. If you go to the AgeWell sites, you'll go under partners and then older adults and caregivers. Oh, and this was actually, yeah,